All right. Hello and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. I am Jeremy. I'll be leading our call today. We do have one pre-submitted question. Um, I will wait until, oh, there he is right now, actually. We have one pre-submitted question, so we will answer that one first. But if anyone else, if any of you come up with other questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or the Q&A, and we can make sure that we get to them at some point today. And I'll do my best to answer those questions. So we'll give it a minute for anyone else to roll in, and then we will start with Helmet's question in just a minute. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. So, our first pre-submitted question that we had for today is from a Helmet Brenner who says, in one app, we have a flow execution extension with data type FileData where we store attachments. We need to change this to a file reference to allow larger attachments. If we change the data type, will records in process, waiting for approvals, etc., go to exception? That's a very good question, and you feel free to elaborate after I give my answer, but the short and sweet answer to that is yes, it'll most likely cause some exceptions. It is almost always not recommended to make any changes to your data types if you have a data structure that's in use, right? If you've just made a data structure, it's easy to go back and make some changes, nice and simple if it's not being utilized yet. But in especially something that's in production or that you've been using heavily in building flows and things like that, that's got a lot of places it needs to be used, things like that, definitely do not recommend making any changes on that data structure. Instead, you need to kind of figure out how you want to do a workaround or rebuild to phase out the old one. But we definitely want to be very careful with making changes to something that's already in use.
Okay. Hi. That's more or less what I thought you would say. But we were thinking, about possible workarounds, and one of the ideas that we had was to add, a file reference column to that data structure. So instead of changing, we were adding another column, and then kind of mapping all of our functionalities and values and stuff and the attachment into that instead of the old one. If I'm understanding correctly, if we took that route, the records or the processes that were in route or in the middle of being executed might still go to exception, but it might be cleaner. What do you think of that approach?
Um, let's see. So I think, yeah, so obviously adding it instead of changing it will definitely remove some of the obvious exceptions. Um, but I think the you'd have to be very careful about where you're utilizing them, I guess, right? Because like if you completely stop mapping to your file data, like you don't want to completely eliminate that, but you also don't want any of your new items to be going into that file data as well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I know um, I've done something. Let me just make a very quick thing just for reference. Show you something that I've seen before. Um, I'm just going to throw some random forms in here. The, what's in them doesn't matter. But one thing I've seen just as like a reference, and you may be able to translate this to what you're hoping for,
Okay.
is if you have like a process that's got some assignments or something that's, waiting for something to happen. Maybe this is utilizing your file data or whatever, and you wanted to start utilizing file reference. Like the example that I've seen is, let's say we have this process, I've got two forms, but at some point I've decided I don't need this second form. In your case, it's you don't need file data anymore. You want it to be file reference. Instead of saying, okay, let me just completely remove this and never use it again, um, if you simply just build around it and you keep the old one there,
Mm-hmm.
but then you build your new process, this old one will still function and it'll still, keep all of the in-process data from the old system that has the old form or the old
Right.
file data or whatever, and can continue the process so there's no breaking issues with
Mm-hmm.
those, right? It's almost like a branch separate thing. So then any new stuff will just continue the process utilizing your file reference stuff, right? But
Gotcha.
then the old stuff will still be in your flow, so it'll still be usable. It won't cause any issues, and this will just utilize your file data. Um, and then you just need to
Understood.
be careful with like, do some reporting or something so you can track what's left in this.
Right.
So, down the line, if eventually this is 100% complete and all of these in-flight assignments have been completed, then this is completely not needed and it can be
Right.
removed. But obviously you want to be very careful about, not deleting that too early or,
Yeah.
removing any in-flight data. So it can
So
be
then,
risky. It's definitely going to be maybe a little bit of an annoying process, but it may be doable this way.
no, I mean, this is mostly what I thought the answer was going to be. I guess the
Mhm.
only my last question related to this was going to be if there was a circumstance where we could get all in-flight records, all in-process records, to the end, and there weren't any in process, and then we made the changes from file data to file reference, would that fundamentally be a better idea, a little bit more plausible, or is it still really risky to make those changes to the data structure after use, after it's been used, for a long time?
Um, hmm. Yeah, obviously it won't. If you know for sure that all of your in-flight assignments and things are taken care of, that won't be the issue. You still have some mapping issues
Yeah,
that you may
29
have
of
to
them actually.
consider. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Um,
looked at them.
yeah, I did just like it was like very simple. If everything's purely mapped, obviously there'll just be a lot of errors that you'd have to
Right.
go in and fix. Um, the only thing you'd have to be careful of, and you'd have to do some testing to know for sure, is sometimes it may try to convert something, or it
Uh-huh.
it may not pop up as an error if it sees something that may be okay. The example I guess I have of this is, and I don't know if you're even using anything as a constant value, but sometimes if you have something as a constant value and then you change it, it'll try to make that constant value fit the the updated change,
Gotcha.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think we have a constant, but I get the vibe on plausibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this answers my question. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think if you want to, be certain that things are going well, you could always do a support ticket. I can submit it on your behalf if you'd like, or if you want to wait until you can, discuss and figure out some things, we can wait on that too. But support will definitely be helpful in this if you need to figure out those changes.
For sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. All right. That was all of our pre-submitted questions. We do have a question from James in the chat, who says, I have a question about case entity configuration folders. So I will let you speak up to elaborate.
Hey, just a quick question. It's probably something I should probably already know, but I'm not seeing like when you pull up a case entity folder and you're looking at the details of it,
Hmm.
you have the case activity over usually in the bottom right-hand side. Yeah, that right there.
Yep.
Where can I tell who approved or what time it was, for that current state? I don't see that information, at least on mine, but see that? Where's that? I mean, I
Yes.
don't see that on mine. Did I miss some setup or something when I did this? All I see is the comments, but it doesn't give me the completed ons, time spent in the interaction, all that detail there. I knew I'd seen that before, but I'm not seeing it on mine. So I'm not sure what I did wrong.
Let's take a look at the assignment, make sure if there's anything different. I thought it normally just did it for you, but
Yeah, I did too. Now on mine, I do use that setup, what is it called, the assignment setup, and that's
mhm.
where I do a lot of that stuff in there. But I mean, that should be.
Yeah, there's nothing in my particular project here. There's nothing fancy about it. Like I use this to select who receives the assignment
Right,
because it chooses managers for me in this particular task, and then like the assignment folder
right,
um
right,
that is from. Otherwise, I hadn't changed anything in
right,
this
right.
at all. So
Yeah,
nothing
so
about
I've
that has
done that, and
changed.
I think I've also got run on setup in there. I got a flow that runs as the task is, when the task is assigned. Um, but other than that, I mean, I just don't see that additional detail, and I know I'd seen it before. I'm just not sure, like when I set up the case entity, did I miss something? It's a case entity, that's all it is. And like on the steps that it's already approved, but if I go to each of the steps, like the approved step, the last step, it doesn't show me who approved it, how long it was there, all that information you were seeing.
Hmm.
I'm not seeing it on that state. Is there something I missed when I set this? It's just a little confusing to me. I don't understand why I'm not seeing that.
Let me check something.
Everyone still there?
Yes, sorry, Jake.
Oh, okay. No worries.
While you're here, do you know off the top of your head why the information about who saves a case entity wouldn't appear?
We're talking about what's on the assignment, no? Right? Isn't that what the question
Right,
was?
it's on like if you
Yeah.
go
Like on the activities,
if you go there, that stuff right there that
this, like
is
who
showing,
completed it,
mine's not
like
showing
when it was
that.
completed.
I only
Do
see the
you
comments.
you only see the comments? Are you storing the assignment within the case entity record? That'd be something to check.
What do you mean by that? Am I storing the assignment in the case entity record? I mean,
Yeah, so for example, if we go back to here and we go in the assignment,
Okay.
show editor, or yeah, assignment
Is it
setup.
this?
right,
Yeah, the
right,
from flow, and if we store it, and if that's at the actual case entity, like the actual process folder, not the main folder that stores everything. I wonder if it will come up there because then the assignment is just an actual object, a physical object that lives in the portal.
right,
And so
right.
that folder activity panel will report on anything that's inside of that, right? And so my presumption, that's be the thing to test, is if it's not in the actual case entity process folder with that folder tracking, then you won't see that information.
Let me check. So I gotta check that assignment folder ID and make sure that's the root folder where I'm storing all these case entities, right? The root folder or,
No, so case entities, right? You have a
right,
main folder that stores it all, but those
right,
case entities are folders in themselves.
right. But that,
So
okay, go ahead.
so for example, if I have new hire requests
Right,
and that's all the new hire requests, and I have new hire requests for Jared, right?
right,
And then I have an assignment that I have to give to a manager to approve, Jared's, what is it, resume or whatever. then I'm gonna store that assignment within that new hire request, Jared, new hire request. And then I will see that assignment in the folder activity panel. That would be the thing to test. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just need to see what, so
Yeah.
that's
So this is my trigger flow, right, James? That's
right.
in my case entity. So it'll run my manager approval flow. And I have my subflow in here that's taking my request folder that comes from the folder ID, right?
Mhm,
So that's the ID of the specific entity that or case entity that's
correct,
going through this
correct,
flow right now.
correct. Yeah,
That folder ID is what I have being passed in my assignment setup and the assignment folder ID.
okay. I gotta make sure that's done that in my,
So that's where it's like keeping track of that detail.
okay. All right, let me double check that and make sure I got that set up right. I got a feeling that's what I didn't do correctly. Okay, I'll look into that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure actually I have one that doesn't have that.
It's in the
Um,
assignment folder type, right? Yeah. Okay, so,
like if in my financial lending one, for example, I think I have a good example of this. I know for sure I don't have that set up in this particular, like set up in that same way in this flow. And you can see that here,
okay,
right?
yeah,
Loan officer review is completed, but I don't have any of that details there.
right, right.
And
That's what I did.
I don't
That's
have
what I,
that particular thing configured in the assignments
right,
in
yeah,
this
I did.
project, but I did on the other one.
Gotcha. That's what I did wrong, because I just checked that and I didn't, I had that was, it said like not selected or something like that. So I had neglected to set that up in my assignment setup panel. So I just assigned it the folder, which the folder ID, which is the folder ID that's being passed through for this specific assignment, right? And
Mhm.
then that should, write all that stuff out to that folder then for the assignment piece. Who assigned it when, how long it was there and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Correct, okay. I will check that. Had one more little thing. I've got an error message on this one, the little, the little exclamation point.
Mhm.
But it has nothing to do with what's on the right-hand side there in the, I don't know what you call it, the parameters, whatever, for that task. But when I pull up the error, it says error on validation, user, my username is not authorized to get account by email. Have you ever seen that before? Can you give me any insight as to what that means? I mean, the thing works still, but I get this error. And there's nothing on the right-hand panel on where you do your setup for that task that's flagged. So I don't know where that error is coming from.
That's like in your flow that has your
Right.
assignment in it.
So right there, I would have the little exclamation point on the step itself.
Oh,
But over
here,
here on
okay,
the right-hand side, where you've got all your stuff, there's nothing flagged in there.
got it.
And I don't, it's set, it just says there's a error on validation, and then it gives my username is not authorized to get account by email. I don't know what it's referring to there.
If it's not showing up, I would assume it's definitely not an assignment setup either, because it could be like within here.
Yeah, I've checked that as well. I don't see anything flagged in there as well. And I
What
checked
about
my
on your
flow
form? Or on like
on the
on the form
forms.
that it's being used? Is that
Let
trying
me
to
check the
grab
form.
the account?
Um, no, it's just, there's, no, it's just the regular, it's all the form data on here is form data is just being passed through to this assignment. It's not new stuff.
Hmm.
So any email addresses or whatever happens to be on this form, which there is one, but it's just being passed through from the original form.
Right. And then what did the error message say one more time?
You know, so error on validation. user, and then my username, is not authorized to get account by email. And I am not, I'm set up as a designer, but not as admin. So I don't know, I'm sure that has something to do with it, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that before, but
Okay. I
I'm
mean, I can submit a
also,
case for this. Just
yeah,
to,
I'm also almost always using an admin profile when I'm using decisions personally. So
yeah,
it's very likely that it's something
yeah,
related to that.
it could be, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
would,
I mean, I need to know what that is because a lot of
yeah.
our designers will not be admins. They will
Well,
just be
if you
designers.
would like, I could submit a support ticket for this one so that we can get that
I mean, I
going.
can
I can
do it. I
submit one
can,
on your
because I
behalf.
can give them screenshots and everything of
Okay.
what it actually looks like, and the actual error message that I get.
Yeah, I
And
think that would be the best path for this one because I'm
yeah,
not
I'll
as
go ahead
familiar
and
with
do
this.
that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that.
And obviously we want to get that cleared away so it doesn't cause any issues.
Yeah, I mean, I did a few tests on the form or on the process, and the task still executes just like it should, sends it out to all the approvers that it should, or signees that it should.
Mhm.
Doesn't seem to affect it in any way. I just don't know where it's coming from and what might be affected behind the scenes that I'm not aware of.
Right.
Okay. Just one more question. I don't know if someone on this call can answer, but the information that it's pulling from, when you've got that assignment activity, that you're displaying there that you just worked out,
Mhm.
who did it and all that. Is that coming from entity assignment table behind the scenes? I see that table seems to be the one that information, like if I wanted to create my own report or something, would I use that table to pull that information from? It looks like it would be, but I'm not 100%.
You're referring to the information that
Right,
is doing
yeah.
this.
Where's that being pulled from? I did find the table, what's it called? Entity assignment, entity underscore assignment, and it looks like that's probably the table.
I would assume that is the case.
Yeah. All right, I'll run some tests. I just thought maybe you guys know offhand.
Yeah, I don't, unless someone else on the call knows off the top of their head right now. I would
It
assume
looks like it
that's,
is, though. I see.
Yeah, if you want to do a quick test, Jeremy, just right
yeah,
click,
I was,
go to the query editor.
yeah, I was trying to do that. It's just loading.
Okay. I can do that real quick on my local. Entity underscore assignment. I always get that wrong. But I
Yeah,
believe that is correct. You'll get the completed by, started by, is assigned, completed, is current, assignment type, has changed, state changed.
right,
Yeah, you get all, it just basically takes that entity, since it's decision visible,
right,
and then we'll just read those columns. We even got the
right.
assignment interaction time too as a
Yeah,
column, so
yeah,
that's where it all pulls
yeah,
from,
that's
if you're
what I
curious.
figured. Now, there is another table that has everybody that was assigned to that originally, because this is only going to store whoever interacted with, right? But there should be a table out there that stores who I assigned it to originally. In other words, like if I assigned it to 15 people, there should be a table out there that has listed all those people that it was assigned to. Because we have another use case where we might need to run a report of that. All these people were assigned to this, then they would want to know. I believe, I can look around for that, but if you guys knew that table off the top of your head, but
I'm looking, I thought it
I mean,
was.
there's something there too.
Oops, I got
all
the-
assignments does show, it shows groups or
Oh, yeah, that's it, thank you.
yeah, it's on the same table.
All
All assignments,
assignments?
it's got the account or the group that it was assigned to
Yeah,
listed
Okay,
here.
called all assignments?
yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's on the same table, but that's the column that it's on.
oh, it's like a list?
All underscore assignments, and it's showing like in this
Yeah.
case, if it's a group, it's giving the group name, or
Okay.
it's the account name, things like that.
And
So
if it were individuals, like say, if I had signed it to different individuals, is that a list field, I guess, then? Because it may not be just one group, it may be like a couple of different groups or a couple of different individual people. Because what I did is in that, in the rule, let's see, what is it called? I don't know. The assignment setup is I used a build array, and on each item, there's a different email address that I assigned it to on that. No, you'd have to go into the
Oh, you mean like this?
the assignment setup, yes. And then I said build array on that sign, yeah. And I've
Got
got
it.
like 3 different folks in there. And that could be 3 different groups, I guess, 3 different groups, whatever I was going to put in there. But how would, curious if that.
Did you ask like how do you get the individual ones if you have like multiple, you assign to multiple people?
Yeah, is that a list
I think
field then?
it's, yeah, well, what it does, Jeremy, could you go back to that? I believe what it does, I think it's not serializes. I think it just like joins the list of strings by comma separated values. I could be wrong on
Gotcha.
that.
So it
Are you
could be
talking about
just the big old
you want me to
ones.
go to the query editor?
Yeah. You go to the all assignments. All
Yeah.
assignments.
I'm making one that has 2 people assigned to it because
Oh,
I
okay,
don't
I
know
gotcha.
if I actually have one right now.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We could pull that one
Gotcha.
up after you. Now that I know the table, I can probably play around with that too. I can take up a lot of time. Ah, yeah.
There you go. That's quick. Yes, there it is. Yep, it's just comma separated.
It's concept. Okay,
All
great.
assignments.
That means
Yeah,
that
but
okay.
both of the accounts there comma separated.
So I can pull that out. Okay, great. That's all I had.
Perfect. All right. We got another question in the Q&A from Daryl. I have a question about taking a CSV in looping through data and sending each row to a flow that calculates premium. Each row of data is a test case that I would like to calculate premium. I have to pass each test case to an entity, which is the input of the flow. All right.
All right. Good afternoon. So what I have here is I'm trying to test 1,000 different cases, and I'm trying to automate this by creating a test flow versus like individually testing or going to Postman, something like that. So I have a flow built already where the inputs are stored as objects, and I have the data is basically CSVs. So to be able to update each object, my goal would be to loop through the first row of this data, pass it to that object, and then take the output of that object or take that data and pass it into the flow, and then continue the loop. So that would be test 1 and then test 2. But when I try to do that, I'm failing at the update. I use an update entity step after the loop, and I don't know if I'm using the right step to try to loop through and get that data in. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if that was clear or not.
Kind of.
Sure. Yeah.
I,
So
I got a little lost in the middle, I think.
okay. Yeah, I have a CSV has 1,000 test cases, so I uploaded it to an entity. And then now I put a loop after that entity to just loop through all that data, fetch it, loop through it, and pass it to another entity. And each row that we're passing is a test case that's going as an input into a flow where it's going to calculate an insurance premium.
Okay.
So basically, I'm trying to automate the concept of I would just key this into several forms and it hits them and then calculate that way. Now I'm just trying to say, how can I fetch this data, pass it into a flow, and then calculate automatically?
Mm.
Yeah. So my first step I had, is I have a fetch step, which was what I did first, but maybe that's not the first step that we should be doing. So yeah, so what I did is I created an entity with this step, which is and then uploaded a CSV. So that's all the data that that's all my test case data. And then I want to pass each, I'm going to loop through each case and pass it to the actual entity that is the input of this flow. So when this was built, they built the inputs for the data that passes into this flow that handles the calculations as an entity. So we basically have an entity called application, and it's all your application data that's passed into the flow. So ideally, I would be taking the data from the first row of data from this fetch step into a loop, into updating that entity. And then the output of that entity is what's passed into my flow that should be able to calculate. The data inside of that should be able to pull me a premium. But I'm feeling after the loop, I have that I use the update entity flow.
From user defined
update,
types or just a search for update one?
Yeah, I have an update I use the update entity step. I didn't mean flow to basically pass in that information from the loop. I think that's what is this called. Add update entity step is the name of it. Or update entity is actually the name of it.
This one.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously it would have your entity in it, with all the data and everything.
Exactly.
And then it goes back to do like the next item in the list.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then once it's done, it would be passing. I have a flow, which I know works. It's a calculate premium flow, which it would take in everything that I guess this is the problem I think I'm running into. Is I'm basically taking one row of data, updating the entity, but every time I loop, I'm just updating the data. I'm not adding it to a list, correct? So every time it loops through that entity, it's just erasing the previous data and that we haven't calculated premium. So what I was doing, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong here, is I was skipping the loop, but I still don't think that answers my question because you can only test one case if you just take the output of the entity into the flow.
Right.
So ideally, I think I'm struggling on how can I loop through all my cases, but basically send each one to the flow to calculate. And, it could be an easier way to do this too. It could be another option where you guys may think it's a simpler way.
Right. Have you considered or looked at like any of this specific user defined types related ones instead of just like the general update entity step? That has like the information you want. if you go to like user defined types and under entities, you should find the specific like data structure that's being used.
Sure.
They've got some items that are specific to it. Selective update is if you don't need to update like every item in the list. Maybe you're only updating one piece of that information.
Yes.
Or you've got the edit entity. This one is a little bit more, has a lot more to it because it has all the like, tags and ID and stuff like that, like extra things. The key here though is it's a lot more dangerous because you have to have that information, and if you don't pass something in, it'll be null. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. But maybe these being a little bit more specific than just the general update entity may do, or may give you more freedom to what you're looking for. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure without knowing like all the details of your project.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can give you just a quick, higher level because that makes sense. So ideally, I have a flow where we basically built it as an API call, and I can go into Postman and with the output of that API and calculate a premium. And after
Mhm.
you can do that one at a time. What I've been challenged with is what if I want to test 1,000? So versus going to Postman and doing 1,000 tests, I'm trying to automate passing in each row as its own data and running that calculation and decisions, just as if we would have keyed it in on some forms. So, I even thought about maybe can I do a get all step? So like the first fetch entity, you do it like a get all, get these records, loop through each record, but still you're running the same thing. You update the entity, whether you do an edit or selective update, you update that entity, but at the end, you're still only passing one row of data. And
Mhm.
I need to be able to loop through every row, pass one row, get a premium, loop through, get the next row, pass through, get a premium, and just continue that loop process until I've gotten 1,000 premiums, or at least 500 and some failed, some things like that. So if that makes sense.
Right.
And maybe this may be better to do. Maybe we get a ticket open and try to tackle it offline, so I could walk through my use case with someone.
Mhm.
And maybe we may have to tackle it that way. Maybe a little difficult to do on a call.
So yeah, I guess one more maybe just quick clarifying question that may help. So right, you have this thing you're fetching, or so you're looping through and updating the entity, and then once it's done doing all the looping, then you go and you're getting the premiums, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're saying you're doing. Have
exactly. Yeah, I'm
you?
taking my done step into the basically into a premium calculation flow, passing it into a flow.
Mhm.
And so that flow has two inputs. So if you think of it this way, there's two inputs, one called application, one called exposure. The application, both are objects, and we're passing these two objects in to a flow that's going to calculate premium. The problem is I can only think of one way to update I can run one quote in, but I'm trying to figure out how to loop through 1,000 and update the object and then send it in that way. Without having to do one at a time, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I even thought about a build a list, but even if you build a list, I feel like it's still only going to calculate one row. Like after you build a list and then you update the entity. But when you update the entity, it's only going to update the first record or the last record based on how you set it up.
And then in your next flow that's gonna do the calculation, is it like fetching from all those entities again to do the
Um,
calculation?
no, it's taking it as an input. So the flow is built where it's expecting an input called application, and that application object has all the
Got it.
data. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and you're trying to just update
Update it
that
to
input so that it's got everything. Okay.
that current row's data and now calculate it, and then update the next row's data and calculate it. Yeah. And then the exposure is a list because it's basically like a location list, and exposure is just a list where we're passing in that list of data for each location, and those two objects together will give you the data to calculate the premium. And I'm just struggling with how to loop through multiple cases of that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I think I understand. I understand generally what you're looking for. I think clearly what we have that isn't quite working isn't yeah, with like your update, you need your update to not override each other. I don't know if any of the other like for each options have worked. If you're like a for each Excel or CSV row would make any difference. Um, that's maybe worth playing around with. Um, but otherwise, I think um, you can maybe take a look at that and we can submit a support ticket on your behalf.
Sure,
And maybe get you in conversation with a support member who can kind of help you figure out what you're missing, find that little missing piece to
sure, sure.
your puzzle there and get you in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah. All right, David, that'd be good. If you could do that, that'd be perfect. Maybe open a support ticket. In the meantime, I will try that for each Excel loop
Mhm.
because maybe I feel like it'll read that Excel, but it'll pass it in. Well, yeah. I
Yeah,
wonder
I
if
mean,
it-
it's worth something. I just want to give you maybe a little something to think about while we wait for
Sure.
your response, and hopefully we'll have a quick response from support to get you in the right direction.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, perfect. I appreciate it. Yeah, that'd be great if you can open that up. And I'll try to tackle this one and see if I can come up with something that way as well.
Yeah, sure. Can you go ahead and just put your email in the chat so that I have it for reference so I don't
Yeah.
lose it, and then I'll get that ticket for you right away.
Mhm. There you go.
All right.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else? You still got a little bit of time. If anyone else has any other questions they'd like to discuss before our lunch and learn is over for the day. All right. I'll take that as a no. Thank you all for joining today's Lunch and Learn, asking lots of good questions. We will continue the rest of this week. We have a little shorter week, but we've got Robert and Greg on Wednesday and Thursday. So if you need any questions or need anything, go ahead and submit questions for the next couple days. Thank you all for joining today. Have a great one.